Most children have experienced the green stain that gets on their clothes when they've rolled around in the grass. They probably have not associated it with the fundamental chemical that is necessary for plant growth, chlorophyll. Green plants have a unique capacity to make their own food by converting sunlight into food energy. This process is called photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, plants combine water and carbon dioxide to produce glucose, a simple sugar. This process can take place only in the presence of chlorophyll, the green substance found in green plants. Because of the plant's ability to produce their own food, they are known as producers. Some of this food energy is used to perform the plant's own metabolic functions or is stored within the plant. Most often, it's consumed by animals. All other living things on Earth are directly or indirectly dependent on the food that producers create. In Activity 3, students conduct an experiment to determine the effect of sunlight on plant growth and survival, and identify plants as producers. This activity will take 2 sessions. Session 1 is about 50 minutes with daily observations for 6 to 8 days. Session 2 is about 30 minutes after completing final daily observations. The vocabulary introduced in this activity is producer and chlorophyll. For this activity from the kit, you will need potting soil, large plastic sheet, planter cups, large plastic cups, small plastic cups for measuring, 2 trays, masking tape, and ryegrass seeds. In addition to the kit materials, you will need to supply scissors, metric rulers, tap water, and activity sheet 3. 1 week prior to beginning this activity, you will need to start growing some grass. Kathy, help me as we demonstrate how this is done. You will fill 16 pots with an equal amount of potting soil. Then you will scatter 15 ryegrass seeds on top of each. Cover the seeds with about ½ centimeter of soil, and place 8 of the pots on one plastic tray and 8 on another. Water with equal amounts of water. You'll place both trays in a moderately warm temperature, and you're going to cover each tray with a plastic sheet. You'll probably want to cut the sheet to a more appropriate size to the tray from the larger sheet. Seeds should sprout in 3 to 4 days. Remove the plastic sheet when the grass has grown to the sheet. Arrange a spot to place 1 tray of the flower pots in the light and 1 in the dark with similar environmental conditions. Keep the soil moist. Kathy, what does this plant need in order to live?
Well, I think it needs soil, air, light, water.
Okay. What did we learn about an experiment in Activity 2?
Well, that an experiment is a fair test to see how things work.
Okay. And so you would hold some things constant and vary some other things?
Right, and we learned we only should change one thing.
Okay, so if we were to design an experiment to find out, for example, if this plant needs light, how would we go about doing that?
Well, then I think if we're going to only change one thing, we should only change the amount of light. We could put 1 in the light and we could put 1 in the dark.
What would be then some of the things we would hold constant?
Well, we'd want to make sure that we had the same amount of soil, we had the same kind of pot that it grew in, the same temperature, the same amount of water.
Okay. So if we were to ask you then what would be the independent variable in this, that would be the one thing that we would change, okay?
So that would be the amount of light.
Okay, so if we wanted to say, well, what would the dependent variable be, which would be what we're going to measure, then what would we say that our dependent variable would be?
Okay, so our dependent variable, the thing that I'm going to measure to see what kind of change happened, we could measure the height, like we did on the last one. We could also look at the health of the plant and see what it looks like.
So just describing it rather than just measuring it. So that would be quantitative, the height, and qualitative, just describing the way the plant looks, maybe its health. Students will observe and compare the health of the plants and measure growth height. Now make sure that students understand that a prediction is based on prior knowledge or experience, whereas a guess is without any prior knowledge or experience. And a hypothesis is a predictive statement of a cause and effect relationship. Have students make a prediction about what will happen to the plants grown without sunlight, and complete question 1 on the activity sheet. Distribute pots with grass seedlings, metric ruler, and 2 pieces of masking tape to each team. Have teams label the control pots light and the experimental pots dark. Kathy, what do you observe about these 2 plants?
Well, I noticed that one looks yellowish looking and the other one looks very green.
Okay, so how could we measure, that's the quality of the plants. If we wanted to measure the quantity, what would we do?
We could, measure that plant height.
All right, let's measure and compare the plant height.
Okay, and we're going to do that in centimeters. So
All right.
I want to make sure I'm measuring from the same position for each one. And so this one is about 8 centimeters.
Okay.
So I guess I should record that.
Right, with the date.
Okay. All right, and then the plant in the dark, I'm going to measure the tallest grass blade, and it's about 8.5 centimeters tall.
That's interesting. So the plants in the dark actually grew a little bit more. I wonder if that's not because the plants are going to grow initially because they have food in the seed. So I can see no significant difference in the height, but there is a little difference in the color and maybe the health of the plant. Does it look a little different? Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to place the control plants back on the tray and leave those in the sunlight, and you're going to place the experimental plants back in the tray and place it in the dark in a cabinet or a closet. Have the students observe and care for the plants every 2 days for the next 6 to 8 days. Give both experimental and control plants 5 milliliters of water using that small plastic cup. On observation days, measure the grass height and record that and the appearance on the activity sheet. After the final observation, collect the data sheets to be reviewed in session 2. To begin session 2, distribute activity sheet 3 to the students. Have students observe and record data one last time and answer question number 3. How does having no sunlight affect the grass plants? Kathy, what happened to the grass grown without light?
Well, when I'm looking at the color, this has a little tint of green, but not very much. It's very pale looking. And these are very green. And when I looked at my last measurements, when I measured my tallest blade of grass, my green plant that had been in light was 13 centimeters tall, but my plant without light was 15 centimeters tall.
That's really interesting. But so which of the plants do you think are the healthiest?
Oh, definitely the ones that were in the sunlight.
The control
healthier.
group, okay. Plants in the dark might grow significantly taller, but will be spindly and unhealthy. They're getting their energy from the stored food in the seed. Kathy, do grass plants need sunlight for healthy growth?
I think they definitely need sunlight for healthy growth.
Based on quantitative data, qualitative data?
Both.
Description of their health. Right, producers, and explained that green plants are called producers because they are able to produce their own food from sunlight, air, and water. Then write chlorophyll and explain that chlorophyll is the substance in green plants that makes it possible for them to make food from sunlight, air, and water. Chlorophyll is green and is the source of the green color in plants. Remember at the beginning of the video, we talked about children rolling around in grass and getting grass stains on their clothes. Well, this is the chlorophyll from the plants that they're getting on their clothes. Did our grass plants have chlorophyll in them?
Well, I think the one in light definitely does because of the green color, but the one in the dark doesn't look like it has any chlorophyll.
Why do you think the grass grown without sunlight lost its green color?
The lack of sunlight and lack of chlorophyll.
Okay, so the plant has to produce the chlorophyll in sunlight. What do you think would happen if the plants had been kept completely in the dark for about 2 months?
Well, I don't think there would probably be any color left in this one, and probably would die. It wouldn't have a way to make its own food.
Even though it had plenty of soil and water and so on, okay? Have the students answer question 4, which is, do you think grass needs sunlight in order to grow and live? Why or why not? Ask the students, if only green plants can get energy from the sun to make food, how do other living things get their food? Well, many animals eat green plants, while other animals eat those animals, and still other animals eat those animals, and so on. In the next activities, we will observe animals to learn more about how they do get their food. For cleanup, grass plants should be transplanted in a spare terrarium or to an appropriate location outside. Wash and dry the flower pots and trays and return them to the kit. Then you might guide the students to the articles on pages 6 through 9 in the Delta Science Reader.